One.
Hello and welcome to Live Coding Happy Hour for December 15th, the last one of the year. And with me are my compatriots Josh Nerius, Chuck Tomasi, and special guest Andrew Barnes. So we are going to have an exciting show in keeping with the Kingston Early Access all Flow Designer all the time. We're going to have some more Flow Designer all the time. So Andrew is on as a special guest because he had mentioned that what he wanted to do was to take an existing integration that he's got and convert it to use Flow Designer. So that's what we are going to pursue today. So with that, let's get to the longer introductions. And let's start with Andrew because he's the guest.
It's exciting to be at the last one for the year. It's exciting for next year to be more. I'm Andrew Barnes. I am a ServiceNow architect at Novant Health, and I love doing this stuff.
All right. And Chuck?
Hey, I'm Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow. I'm the ServiceNow guy with the untied red bow tie.
That doesn't rhyme. It doesn't rhyme. I'm Josh Nerius. It really bothers me. Anyway, I don't know if I can get over that. I'm Josh Nerius. I'm a developer advocate here at ServiceNow in the developer program, developer.servicenow.com. And it's fun to be sitting and watching for the second week in a row.
Very nice. And I'm Dave Slusher, also a developer advocate at ServiceNow. So let us get to it. Let us go in the same order. Let us run through our libations, and then we will get down to it. Was there something that we wanted to bring up before? It seemed like there was some business, and I can't remember what it is. Hopefully it'll come to me. There was something we wanted to feature or something we wanted to talk about before we got rolling. I cannot remember. It's been that kind of week.
So I'm going to start off, and it's a mixture today. So I actually had Criminally Bad Elf with Lump of Coal.
Okay.
You have an interesting Christmas going on.
When you say mixture, are you pouring them in the same glass or you're just rotating? Your load balance the beers?
They are in the same glass. So it's a dark stout with a amber.
Oh, so kind of like a black and tan situation. Yeah, nice.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Do they have different gravities so that one floats on the other, or are they kind of just mix?
They appear to be just mixed.
Okay, interesting. All right, Chuck.
I have a Deschutes Fresh Squeezed IPA. I think I've had this one in the past, but I definitely know I've had it off show, but I don't know if I've had it on show.
Very nice. And I've got something brand new, a Chicago beer, Around the Bend, Pretty Lights. It's a Belgian triple ale with cranberry and almond, and I'm really, really scared.
And I've got the Sam Adams White Christmas. So I guess we do kind of have mostly festive brews here. Not the deepest cut. Like if beer drinking was REO Speedwagon, it wouldn't be Whiskey Night, but also it's not Keep on Loving You. It's more like maybe a Keep Pushing or Riding the Storm Out, somewhere in there.
Wow.
All right. And
use your own subjective rating. I don't know what the heck he's doing.
So anyway, Andrew, you want to go ahead and share your screen and let's get rolling on this. So
I'm excited. I'm excited about this one because this is something that I was thinking of doing over Christmas, of taking an existing integration and moving it into Flow Designer and Integration Hub. So I'm paying attention.
Yeah, and in fact, somewhere I can't remember if it was on one of our YouTube videos or in the community. Earlier today, somebody was asking, I think it was on one of our Tech Nows maybe, somebody was asking about Flow Designer as a migration path away from workflow. And I said, the answer is kind of a strong maybe. It really kind of depends on your use case, really. But that would be that all in the future. These are all kind of interesting avenues to pursue, right? Yep. Kind of the best practices for like how do you decompose a workflow into Flow Designer if you want to do that? How do you take any existing thing and then start working in Flow Designer with it? All right,
absolutely.
Andrew, take it away.
What we're going to talk about today is I've got an existing integration that I pulled over into a personal developer instance because I don't have a Kingston instance to actually do this on. So I've got that integration loaded. I'm going to walk through it real quickly so that we see what the sort of old method is. And then what we're going to do is try and replace that with Flow Designer. So let's get rolling here.
Can I get you to increase the font size a bit?
More? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's doing some kind of weird artifacting thing, I think, because
Yeah,
of the resolution or something there. You've got a crazy enormous screen, I think.
You can tell from the tiny little icons.
I do have a crazy enormous screen. But is that better now? Or do I need one more?
One more would be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until the forms become uncomfortable is my usual threshold.
So we're talking about this integration today, and this is with AirWatch, which is a management tool for Mac OS type devices and mobile devices. So we use this to track all of our iPhones, iPads, and Mac OS devices, which aren't very many at our organization. We're mostly a Windows shop. So this is a relatively small integration for us, but I think it's good for this purpose. So I'm going to walk through the steps, which the very first step in this integration is a outbound REST message. So I've got that loaded here. We've got our typical things. We've got an endpoint. We've got our HTTP request headers. We've got authentication. We've got our method is a get method for this one, which further specifies some variables in its endpoint. And, we've got the regular testing things going on here.
So you validated this already works, right? There's no
Yes.
issue with the integration. We're just getting that over to...
Right. So I've got this integration loaded. It's working. It's running. I'm just going to want to walk through the pieces of it so that we know what we're replacing from to So this is working right now. We have a scheduled job that runs on a daily basis, which invokes that REST message. So let's pull that up and get the job definition here, which is a little bit different in Kingston to pull those up. So pretty straightforward schedule job here that, starts the REST message, gets the response, parses it, and then does the integration pieces, which is creates a import set record for it and loads. So that's what we're doing here is we're creating a new import set on this AirWatch table. We set it to loading. We get our parsed devices from our input, our response. Then we're creating the individual rows in that AirWatch table, and we're setting a bunch of fields from our response into the rows. And then down here we process the import set, which kicks off our transforms. And then this little sucker down here actually goes and grabs more. So we throttle this particular integration to only get 500 responses at a time, I believe. So we say if we haven't reached the end, go get some more. So that's the scheduled job. And we can go take a look at one of these imports. So if we go over here to our import sets, we've got one that we loaded just earlier. And I'm only grabbing 10 so that it's nice and responsive. And we're updating records. So we're getting these mobile devices over here and loading their data in.
Very cool.
So that's our starting point is on a daily basis. We've got a scheduled job that calls this REST message, that calls AirWatch, gets a response, parses that response, puts it in an import set, does a transform, and then you're off to the races.
So how much of this are we looking to transfer? I mean, the flow itself, we could bring that scheduled job into Flow Designer. Are you looking to do the REST integration as well as some sort of integration hub piece?
I don't know. We're going to go as far as we can. Is my plan for today. So I'm actually not sure what the limitations of Flow Designer are and where it makes sense to stop doing things in there and pick up in the traditional methods. So I'm just picking up on the fly here. That let's get into Flow Designer. Yeah.
I really like
to
that.
talk through your use case a little bit. So the things that you're going, so you want the schedule part to go into Flow Designer, or which parts do you want to Flow Designerize?
So certainly the initiating the message, the outbound message, I saw for sure that seems to make sense to do in here. The actual scheduling of it seems to fit nicely in the Flow Designer, but it's not necessary to go in there to trigger it through Flow Designer. But I don't see a great deal of reason why not to. Probably where it'll fall off, it just because I have no idea what the limitations are in Flow Designer is actually triggering a transform. I don't know where we're at on that, but I feel like we might get that far, just based off of what I've seen that you guys have done. You can initiate, so if we get our response and parse it, and that's as far as we get, that's fine. But if we can get that into an import set, then we can definitely trigger the transform from the Flow Designer, because we can do that based off of state. So I'm not sure where the edge is.
My architectural hat right now says and Josh and Dave can chime in on this as well. I'm thinking we should start with a spoke to deal with AirWatch integration first.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's where I would start as well. And what's interesting, what I really like about this is the fact that, this whole scenario is a very common integration pattern you see in ServiceNow, where you've got to go and reach out to a system and pull in some data and do some processing. So looking at how that maps to Integration Hub, this is a very interesting exercise to me. I'm looking forward to seeing this.
All right. So the terminology of Flow Designer, what are spokes? Sorry.
So spoke is, so to do that, even backing up from Flow Designer, I think you want to just go create an AirWatch scoped application first.
I did that. Okay.
Okay.
So
gotcha. Okay.
Create an AirWatch scoped application. Got one. Haven't done anything in it, but.
Okay, cool. So so then what you want to do is go back to your Flow Designer then. So you don't actually need to, you just need the scope to exist. So if you had an existing scope that you wanted to put this in. So at that point, when you create your new action.
Yeah. New action. Let's do it. So we want that accessible from all scopes. Seems reasonable. Then we want to put it in the AirWatch import scope.
And let's name it. So like, what are we pulling? Like the first action is going to be pulling the AirWatch down, right? So
yes.
Let's name it. Yeah. Let's name it something about our,
So AirWatch retrieval. And go get AirWatch data. So anything seems we can adjust these later through the edit properties, but seemed fairly straightforward there. So do you think we should tackle the building the outbound REST message parts first? So create our payload.
Yeah.
Build the.
Yeah, I think so. Like, okay. So in your integration, like what's the minimal thing that you, right? So you got the feel for like when you present the action, like you want to give as little, you want the user to have to require as little config information as possible. So have you kind of, do you have a notion of like abstracting that down to the smallest set that would uniquely identify this call to this action?
Absolutely. And
cool.
The smallest scope there is going to be how many devices we want to get at a time, I think. So we're basically, for this integration, we aren't, since it's so small, we don't scope on, we just pull down everything it has every day.
Okay.
Because it's only about 1,000 devices. So we just grab them all every day. So all we do is limit the polling to the endpoint to 500 devices per call. So we'd want to make that configurable. So for our example purposes, where I was using 10, so that would be one of the input I would take is the device or page size.
I'm thinking endpoint is going to be in there as well, right?
Well, in theory, the endpoint would be part of the actual REST operation. So yeah, here you would.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask the user for the endpoint here, I don't think.
It kind of depends. It depends how reusable you need this to be, right? Would there ever be a situation where you would have multiple flows with different endpoints?
Not for this one. No.
Okay.
They would all be so now this one is actually specifically pulling iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
So we might want to take
like a device type,
which could then choose our endpoint for us as a parameter.
Okay. Yeah, that's the things to think about. And so like nothing we're doing here, we can always go back and change later on. But the upfront thinking is kind of like you want to abstract out anything, because what you're trying to do is make it as like drag and drop and one click, as few clicks and as few little typing operation for anybody to use this. And so if no matter what they do, they're basically going to have like the same base endpoint, and then the rest are like query parameters or things like that. Like abstract out anything that you think you might get some value from the reuse of.
So one thing that I hadn't thought of yet, but that I did in the integration was when you were asking for the page size, you then have to keep track of which page you've already done. And I don't know if that belongs here in the input or is that part further on.
So yeah, that gets interesting, because you could, if the action takes a page size and a device type, and it's going to go and it's going to retrieve records, you could say that the output of the action tells you what the next page is, or tells you what the current page is, or however you want to do that, so you could then go to the next page.
Right.
One thing I will say is, I mean, generally, so like taking a step back and philosophically, like the whole thing behind Flow Designer is make the actions such that the person that's actually using the actions doesn't know anything about the underlying details. So you could also go as far as to say that you basically put all of this in a script. And I'm not saying you should, but that's an option as well. So there's kind of two extremes that you can go to as to how much you expose and how much you don't.
So I sort of like the page size and device type as abstractions, and I think anything else would probably the user wouldn't need to specify. So if we can do it inside of the without having user input, I think that
makes sense.
What I would go for here.
And then if worst case scenario, you find out later you need it, you can just add it.
Right.
Okay.
So now we go in and what, Chuck?
I was just going to say on the variables, these are the variables you're going to be presenting on the form when you drag an action out. So typically here is where you'd make them human readable, space separated, that kind of thing. But we can.
Sure, we can do that. So we're going to use a connection alias. We need to create one, which is there. There it goes. It was just being a little slow.
And a little tiny.
And a little tiny. That was really small.
Must be that super high-res monitor. It would have normally fit with the regular font size.
So this is going to be our retrieve devices connection. Actually, this should be more like AirWatch. And we'll create some credentials. Lovely little boxes. New credentials. And we're going to want to do basic auth. User. Oh, that's not the name. And let's grab that password, which I handy dandy put over to the side. And let's go. Connection alias. Well, that's going to get annoying.
I think that DPI scaling is something that Windows has not fully solved yet.
Well, if you actually tell Windows to do it as opposed to the browser, it's actually a little happier, but I didn't think of that ahead of time. So when do I need connection credentials? Yes, that seems reasonable. And all right, connection URL is going to be down here. So that connection URL that I threw in there is our base start point. And then we'll be adding things on top of that. We are doing a get, yes. Our path we want is, oh, wait, don't do that. Something like this. And this is where we need to, yeah, I'm gonna start grabbing some of the things here. So the next one is gonna be, we want to send over our page size. Size is page size.
Look at this guy.
And
Didn't we? Weren't you putting the device? Wasn't that one of your parameters? Do you want to parameterize that as
oh,
well?
absolutely. That is one of our parameters right there. Thanks for that.
And more comments from the peanut gallery. You can actually put these into query parameters as well, so you don't have to do string building up there. If you just have search, and then you could do
Okay.
basically the key
That
value
makes
pairs down there.
sense. So we won't need any of that then, and we just do key value pairs here. Excellent.
Nice.
Look at that. So we're going to want the page size to be shockingly page size. Whoa. That's hilarious.
You can minimize your step panel on the left if you want. That'll give you some more space.
Oh, that is hilarious. That's great. So reminder for next time, I need to present at this level. Use Windows scaling as opposed to we probably do need to send it page somewhere. Now that I'm looking at the endpoint I need to build here, and page size, we need model and device type. So let's go. We need you. We'll do just page one for now.
So let's actually get philosophical while you're typing that. So is the page? So now the question really would be, when you give it that number to the action, is that saying that's the total? So you're giving it the page size. Maybe what you don't want to do is give it the page size. Maybe you want to give it the total number you want back, and then make the paging and the page transparent to it. It's a possibility. I don't know. I actually don't know anything about whether that's a good idea or bad because I don't know anything about this integration. But you could conceivably do all the paging kind of stuff under the hood.
Under the hood. Yeah.
So it's really up to you. And
So-
I'm thinking that like the page itself might be a little more of an implementation detail that you want to give the user. So one somehow or another, let's keep that in the background. We don't have to solve this
Yeah.
right now, but it's a thing
So
to think about. That
that's
may
good to
be
think about there, Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
may not be what you want.
So what I
don't
want-
have to think about that.
What I want to do, as far as this goes, at least my thinking on it was present, another user of this with the page size, and then it figures out, how to grab them all. So what I might want to do, abstraction-wise, is if I don't want all the results, but I only want up to a certain number, then it handles and give it a page size, it figures out how to go and grab all those pages.
Mm-hmm.
But that makes sense. But this is close enough for government work at the moment. Then we need a couple of headers for specifying our we want to specify where do I have those handy? I thought I had those right here. Nope. I don't seem to have those handy.
Are they on the other tab still?
For just one moment. And I'll grab my headers over here to the side. Nope, can't do that. Doesn't like me. Oh, yes, I can actually just go grab these from the other tab. Ha ha ha. Rest message. Do have them in my instance. And we need content type, accept, and so content type.
Is that one case sensitive?
I don't
Shouldn't be.
Okay.
Content type is.
I've been messed up with headers so many times. I just get too literal sometimes.
There's nothing wrong with that. A little copy paste will make us happy. And I believe that's just capital. And we're going to want JSON for both of these. And somehow we.
Oh, yeah, you lost.
Awesome.
There's another one in there. Yeah, it seems to have munged the start fragment, end fragment in the other one, in the AW tenant code. Yeah, extra. Not much copy paste.
Yeah.
I was really wondering what that header was all about. Start fragment, content type, what?
Oh, okay. Apparently it's really just doesn't want to copy paste.
Well, at least you're not getting the whole hyperlink code.
Well, we just need this part here.
Yep.
And this part here.
Your programmer's best friend is letting you down.
Yeah. I am not the greatest speller, but at least all of my code is spelled improperly the same everywhere because I copied and pasted it. So resource path. What are we missing here? Search. Need.
It does not like your question mark.
Oh, yeah. I suspect it's going to build it itself. Try it without the question mark. It's probably trying to build it itself.
Hey, it's way happier with that. Look at that.
Bingo.
All right, so we have what is reasonably an okay rest step there. So now, how do you try it to see if it does anything? There's a try somewhere, right? Or do we need to build a?
We should be driving outputs from that. It's like once you send that, what are you expecting to do?
Well, you can, but I mean, we can test it in its current state as well.
Okay.
And so, I mean, basically, the easiest way to do that is just to create a flow and throw this on the flow, and then you can do a test action.
It's just start a flow and throw it in there, and then you can test it, right?
Yeah, but
yeah, devices. And let's throw that in our AirWatch. Go. And we don't need a trigger because we're going to invoke it directly. Action. And we need to turn on, where's our draft? Draft actions.
Someone's been watching.
I watched some of the shows today on 2x speed. So Josh is really fast at learning this stuff at 2x speed.
It is funny. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and sometimes I go and I listen to things at normal speed. I'm like, why is everybody talking so slow?
Everyone sounds drunk when you listen to a thing at normal speed when you're used to fast.
It is so true.
So we're going to give it a couple of parameters. So we're going to give it iPhone and 10. We're going to then give it a run. I don't remember that part.
So the test button is grayed out. I'm guessing it's because there's no trigger, is what I'm thinking.
That's interesting
Let's
because
give it
the
a
test
trigger.
skips the trigger.
Yeah.
That's funny. So we can go ahead and at least reasonably simulate it, which is, I think we were running this daily at 2 o'clock. And then
There's,
save.
there's the test
Nope.
button.
Yeah. So now you've
There
got the
we
test
are.
button. Cool.
That's goofy.
That's funny. You need a trigger, but you don't actually need the trigger. I like
Well,
it.
no, you actually do need the trigger because whether it's timed or if it's a record-based trigger, it needs to know whether it's a record-based or time-based, because if it's record-based, it's going to present you with the picker.
That's a good point.
Oh, that does make sense. It's
Saved.
saved. Flow has been executed. We've got an error. Look at that.
Connection
Love
refused.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we didn't specify mid
Credentials?
server.
Oh, mid-server.
Mid server.
That's where the mystery comes
So-
in.
That's where some mystery is here, because we need to see how we send this through a mid server. Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm.
Backs away slowly. So I'm guessing this is going to be in that connection record. I might actually go back to the main platform and explore that connection form.
All right, let's take a look. Connection credentials. So there's the credential, and here's the connection.
Okay.
Let's take a look, see what we
Nope.
have. Oh, look at that. There's a handy checkbox.
Ooh.
It's
Nice.
mid-server.
I love it.
It doesn't
More
then
points for Josh.
specify which mid-server, but that seems like an important
Detail.
but maybe that presents the mid-server choice in the flow designer.
You are so optimistic.
I'll be honest, in my development slice of things that I've done, I've never once used a mid server. So this is I have just managed to always not be down that path. So
Let's
I
close
have,
this.
but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I've done more mid-server stuff than I would care to think about, but it's been a while. It's been a happy while. What I suspect might be the case here is there might be some kind of
Maybe there's a step for that or something.
like mid-server capabilities thing where basically we're saying that these are the mid-servers that are eligible to pick up certain kinds of tasks, which is kind of more of an orchestration thing, right? Where orchestration can go and basically it will run on different mid-servers based on what the mid-server is configured to be able to do.
Discovery does the same kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I suspect. I don't know for sure that's what's going on here, but
So let's go
Well,
check your
we-
mid-server
we-
configurations.
We could just give it another run
yeah, we could do that too. I mean,
just to see if that was magical, because
do it.
I love
You're
magic.
so optimistic.
No, okay. Hey,
Aha.
that even points you to say, hey, the mid is not yet supported on Integration Hub. Please don't do this.
Oh, bummer.
However,
London.
this is still possible.
right,
This
you
is
can
still
use
possible.
a script step
Yeah.
so we got to switch it from this. We can't just do the rest step builder.
Yep.
Use a script to call
So-
the REST message.
Yeah, so we can call our existing REST message because, again, this is an existing integration. We're not building a brand new one. So we already have that REST message, and we could just call it, which is what we're
yeah.
doing already.
You've got the
So,
script in the
let's-
scheduled job. We could just steal a lot of that.
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah.
So let's go and change that process then, because let's just make a new action. We're gonna want a new.
Well, it depends on what you want to do, because you could add a script step in here. If basically, if you can't use the rest step anyway, you can throw a script step in here. Use your inputs, save a little time if you want.
Where's the button to make a new step?
It looks like I'm wondering.
So
if
it's saying
the-
read-only action. Did you bop out of the scope at some point or something unusual like that? It's saying read-only up there. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I think
Let's
the
get a
scope is the
reload.
issue. Okay, now
There we go.
we're better.
Yeah, so press either the plus button above or below.
Ah.
You will.
Yeah, we didn't have any plus buttons because it was
read-only.
unhappy with us. So there is look at that script step, and we're going to invoke REST message.
And I think this is really interesting because what this is showing is that, well, maybe the mid server is not, sort of baked into that easy form. There's still a path. There's still a way to do this. And so we're discovering stuff for the people that.
Yeah, it's funny that there's a button that then tells you, don't do this.
We're going to scan all the instances and find out how many people check that button, and that'll tell the product development how hard to work on it.
That'll be our demand test.
But A+ on giving us an error message that actually let us know what was going on.
I was actually pretty excited about that error message.
As opposed to error 367, not permitted.
Not permitted. Function not found.
All right, so we do have our job definition down here, which the part here is reasonably good stuff. So we want to grab that part at least for sure. Come on in here.
This is where you're going to have to swap out your parameters.
All right. Let's see if there was anything else in there useful that we needed. So we are going to need to do that. I don't know if we'll do it exactly the same way in the script, but we'll pull it over for now. And then I think that was it because the rest of it was post-processing stuff. So the actual just call the mid server and do something is what we grabbed. Yeah, let's go from there. I've got my optimism hat on today. I don't know why.
It's the beer.
It's the beer. All right. So go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say one thing I just noticed, and now is the perfect time to migrate to the new thing, is JSON.parse instead of JSON parser.
Oh, yes.
You can tell the era in which the integration was written based on if it's using JSON parser or JSON.parse.
Or the era in which the developer was trained.
Yeah, well, that's true too. That is greatly true. So let's see. So we're doing what?
So what you can do is actually just
method?
get rid of line 9, and then in your line 10 there, it's just capital JSON.parse.
Yeah, it's just JSON, right?
Yep. There you go. And this was something that came in with ECMAScript 5 whenever that happened. Helsinki, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so I haven't rewritten this in a while. Let's grab that. Keep all that the same, and so this stuff can go away. All right, look at that. Fancy.
We also need to swap the page number parameter on line 4 with inputs.
So we're going to
inputs.page number, is that what we called it? Or was it inputs.page underscore number? I can't remember what it was called.
We don't care. We're going to try.
Oh, we don't get the page number. No.
Oh, that's true.
We're gonna test this with a 1, I think.
Yeah. So let's. We have that somewhere though. That was in. Nope. We hard coded it.
Yep, that was in the REST message one.
So it's 1 now. Yay! Actually, I think we want 0 for this purpose.
Oh, good
so
point.
Page number, because we want the first one, which happens to be 0 for this integration. And that might get us something. Now, is there a way to just tell this not to be active? Or we just get rid of it? Let's just get rid of it. We don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
We can rebuild it better, stronger, better, faster in London.
Exactly.
Between the REO Speedwagon and the $6 Million Man, we're generally showing our age on this call.
Meanwhile, I'm like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Oh,
Josh makes me feel bad about that sometimes.
I'm only half joking.
I have a story I can tell you about Knowledge 16.
I think I'm the old man in this crowd today.
I don't know that you are, Chuck. All right, let's see. Error constructing. We probably didn't send it everything it wanted because we didn't handle the. Did I not send it the page? Let's go take a look at our REST message real quick. Well, I mean, it should have been everything because that's what this is doing. What else is it looking for? Of course, I didn't name it AirWatch. I named it iPhone AirWatch because it's just iPhones. I'm not sure if I love this or not yet. You have to click the open record. I feel like I love it, but I'm not sure yet. Still getting used to it.
It's definitely an adjustment.
Yeah, at least it's consistent now.
So the only thing I have to send it is page number. So that should have been it. That's the only thing I'm required to send it. I've hard-coded the rest of these in this. Let's see. Did iPhone get parameter execute?
Is the REST message v2 verb case sensitive?
It is. You know what else?
Is lowercase get going to be a problem, actually?
Oh,
no, that was the
that
name.
part.
That was the name.
Oh, okay.
You might have to do global dot. One way to try this out is if you go back to the REST message and do the previous script usage. I'm just wondering if there's anything different showing up.
Let's see.
In there.
That is a handy button.
I love that button.
It's a good button.
So iPhone AirWatch get
looks.
I would throw before iPhone, just put global dot and see what happens, and then also make sure that this is accessible from all scopes. Which I guess would probably end up being on the message. Yeah.
This guy. This scope only. Look at you.
There we go.
All right. Well, let's switch our scope here and open this guy up. Haven't needed to do that working in global all the time as we do in our production instances. All right, so that should have made it relatively more happy. Let's just give it a whirl. Test, run, get the thing. No. Hey, that's better. No. Is that the same message?
I think it is, but I think try the global dot thing now and see what that does.
Let's add it.
One thing at a time.
One thing. And
it's weird because in the string, so it'll be inside the inside the quote. Yeah, right there. And it's weird. It feels really weird because there are spaces in it and all of that. But I think that might do it.
That just feels.
It does.
Super, super wrong.
I'm watching. I'm kind of hoping. I'm kind of hoping this doesn't fix it because. Oh my God, that seems fixed. Do you notice the amount of time it took?
That took time.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
It's a weird one.
You are right that feels dirty and wrong.
It really does.
Which, I mean, ultimately you can choose what to name your REST messages, but it still feels wrong.
Is that because, so why is that? Is that because it is implicitly named scope dot whatever, and because this is built in global scope, that the name of it is implicitly global dot whatever you call it?
Yeah, if we had done this, if we were in global scope already, or if we had made this message inside the scoped application, we don't have to worry about the prefix, but because we're crossing scopes, we have to add the prefix.
Yep.
Right. So if we were doing it,
as the script includes.
So basically, the actual name of that, although you don't see it from the UI, the actual name of it is global dot iPhone dash AirWatch.
Yeah.
iPhone space dash space AirWatch.
Yep.
It's just that it's hidden from you the way that you view it in the platform.
Yeah. So
and somewhere down in there,
actual name.
Like if you looked down in the database table, it's global dot that. And so, yeah, that. Okay.
No, I don't know if it's stored that way in the database. I think it's just a runtime artifact of crossing scopes.
Yeah, but the putting that thing inside the string like this, the value of the literal string just feels, as we said, just feels weird.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is that I would argue that probably in 9 times out of 10 you're going to want to put the REST message in the scope you're working in. So it's less common that I think you would cross scopes to call a REST message. But
yes.
I guess the other thing is that it's global. Like if this was X_1234 scope, it wouldn't seem so weird to me, I think.
Yeah,
true.
It would feel more natural then. And yeah, I would think you'd want to put the REST message inside the same scope as the thing invoking it for most things.
I mean, if you were like, if this was Greenfield and you were starting from the beginning, you would be creating a spoke, which would be a scoped application, and you would create the REST message and the action and everything. And it would all be bound together. Yep. But what you're presenting here is an extremely real world case that a lot of people are going to have.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do this, was see how I can leverage this to adjust things so that we can make some of the integration work that gets done accessible to the more middle tier parts of our teams, as opposed to the upper tier integration levels. Mm-hmm. So I know I saw lots of logs available when I was watching the videos earlier. Is there? I don't see. Maybe just because I didn't tell it to do it. Can I see the response?
Scroll down a bit. What do you have?
That's it.
In your script, you didn't actually do anything with the response, right?
No. Yeah, I didn't do anything with it, so that's why I was saying, do I need to?
We could throw some GS infos in here, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
or you could
just take that back, sir.
Or you could just do outputs.response equals parse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. And the key here is, and the reason for all of this is that we're not at this point using the REST message step. The REST message step is where all that richness came from. And so since we're basically just calling out to a script include, we don't necessarily know what that script include is doing. It's just doing stuff. Or that external script is doing stuff. And so it doesn't have the same level of richness unless we actually set it up.
And what's the syntax here? I think it's would I send
I think
it
outputs out anything.
Yeah, whatever you name it is what your variable is going to be called.
All right.
And then down at the bottom, you have to actually add the output as well.
And
correct.
Parsed. And then say parsed.
That should
I
do
think
it.
it's an object though. You parsed it, right?
It's parsed, so it's a string at this point.
Wasn't response body a string?
Response body is a string. So this
you did a JSON.parse. It's now an object.
Yeah, he's
you know what you might want to do is just comment out that parse for a second, and just pass the response body.
Yeah.
And leave it as a string for the moment.
Like I said, I'm a copy paster.
And just call it response. I mean, call it anything but parse now.
Yeah, it's not parsed. We're gonna call it Dave.
I'm fine with that.
We call it anything but parsed.
I used to work with a guy. If he's watching this, he'll get a kick out of this. But he called everything Bob. He's like, yeah, it's just Bob, and
It's
you'd
Bob.
always find the variable Bob throughout his code. It was pretty funny.
So now we go to our step, and then we get our output, which is exactly what we wanted to do. So, yay, we have output.
So we got up. Nice. Very nice.
So we have 10, actual iPhone devices and all of the information that we wanted about them available to us to do things with now. So step 1, call our REST message. Successful.
Okay.
We like that. So now that we have our message, we need to then see if we can do something with that, like put it in to either, and perhaps this is where we think about what we want to do and what's available to us. Do we go the path of putting it into an import set and doing transforms, or do we not need that step anymore and do that work here? I don't know. Does anyone have any ideas on that front?
My first question would be, how complex are your transforms? Do they do a lot of...
Super easy. If
they're super easy, I would just take that whole step away. Yeah. I would just make straight up calls, because, I mean, for me, usually my decision-making process with transform maps is, are there related fields and related records, and do we have to deal with sort of like reconciling reference values, and do we create or insert choices, stuff like that? Yeah. And if it's not, if you don't have to deal with that, you might be fine just processing it directly.
And
the downside is that
I brought that up, because I was like, this feels like it's an opportunity for us not to just replicate what we were doing before, but to see if there's, some things that we can take advantage of here that we might not need to replicate.
Yeah.
Transform instead of replicate.
Yeah,
so
and to me, the action then sort of kind of basically bundles up that functionality of what the transform is doing and kind of replaces it.
All of these strings are going straight into string fields. So we're not doing anything to these. We're just taking these and dumping them in other fields. So
is it coalescing on a thing? So like, what's the
it's absolutely coalescing on our serial number.
Serial number. Okay.
At which point it's just a matter of saying, look it up and do the thing. And I think take it out. The only downside is if you wanted to be able to look at the thing afterwards and see the entire result set of, what were all the records that came in and what was the status and all of that. That's where transform maps do shine. And so there is some, I guess, traceability and debuggability that goes away by getting rid of them. But if there's not a lot of business logic there, I don't think you're losing a lot.
Yeah, and that traceability is also more at the so one thing that I do like to use the import sets, and not to get too off track here, but if we can skip them, that's good. But I probably also build into any of these integrations that I do that skip that to have like an inactive step that uses that instead or a way to debug it. On the fly, because there's not really, they only go back 7 days on most instances anyway, those import sets, because of the table cleaner for that. Mm-hmm. So there's not lots of historical information. There's just, near historical information. So usually by the time there's an error, you've missed that window anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
At least in my world. So yeah, let's try and skip it. So we've got an output as a string right now. Do we want to send it as an object to the next step? I feel like yes.
I think so. I guess I haven't played much with native objects and passing them around. So in our output types, is there a generic, like a JavaScript object or some kind of...
We didn't have object. We had the basic field types.
So it might be easier safer,
Just send
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
As
just
this,
parse it where you need
and
it
just
to be.
handle that, parse it where you need it.
Yeah.
All right.
There's
So
that name value pairs thing that might be close, but then if you had some kind of nested thing, that might break down.
Yeah, and I think that's the platform name value pair, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably not going to work quite. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we've got our output variable, so we need a new step then. Or do we go and create another? This is an edge where we might want to create another action or not. I get that's a design decision, I think, at this point, right?
Yeah, so let's what we might want to do, because we're at 5:26, so we might consider just stopping here on the question. So why don't we talk through the question? I don't know that we want to necessarily implement it at this point, but let's talk through the two possibilities, which is which is the very next thing that you do. I mean, so you actually get three possibilities, right? Which is you add, you don't return that response body, which we kind of stuck in there as a, just to see it, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe you parse it and handle it in this script. Possibility 2 is you pass it as an output and another script action, another script step inside this action handles it. Mm-hmm. Step 3 is the action returns the payload and another action handles it.
Right. Yep.
I'm going to just say that I probably think step 3 is the worst of the choice, because in general, what you don't necessarily want with the actions is to have the input to an action be a payload of a thing. And that's a little too, that's too implementation detail-y for what we want actions to be about.
That makes sense.
So then it's just really, do you want to, and then it's down into composability. Is there any value in having another script step, or should you just do what you're going to do right there at line 11?
See, I'm actually really torn on this, because part of me wants to say, yeah, we shouldn't pass JSON bodies around and things like that to other actions, because whatever. But at the same time, I guess part of this depends on the audience of who is expected to actually consume these actions. So, a lot of actions we think of, hey, we want to be able to give this to a process owner. Maybe they're not extremely technical, or maybe they don't understand all the details of the integration. In this case, I feel like that's not maybe the case. The consumer is the developer. And so like my question would be, could there be multiple ways in which you would process the output? So maybe you retrieve stuff and you do different things with it. And if that's the case, would you then maybe want to have more granular actions? So I don't know. I'm really torn on what the right.
It's really I think of it as how I hook up devices in my smart home. I've got an outlet. It's got inputs. It's got outputs. It pretty much does the same thing every time, no matter where I hook it. I can put a lamp on one end and I can plug it into the kitchen outlet, or I can put a vacuum cleaner in one end and put it in the bedroom. So that's the way I kind of think of the actions. Is if you separated them into separate actions, could you take that? Let's say we have one that invokes the message and one that processes the message. You're going to have to make sure that processor understands that it may get different inputs from different actions, not just from this action. So it's how flexible do we want to make that next action versus if it's more tightly coupled with the response to process it in this action.
And Chuck, that's exactly what I was thinking here was if we're talking about doing it for import sets and actually still utilizing import sets, then I would definitely want to have an action that could take a payload and put it in an import set.
That case, yeah, that sounds like a great use case.
Very repeatable. Take a JSON and dump it into an import set.
You may have one action that says processes through import set, and it says, okay, well, the input for that action is what import set and where's the payload coming from? And the other one that says, let's do a direct table insert, and it says, what's the table and what's the payload? So yeah, I could see that. That might make sense in that case.
So that could seem to sort of drive that decision step there, and is if you want to skip, as Josh was saying, is if you're going to make it specific, put it as close to the data as possible, because it's specific. But if you want to make it generic, then you can move up these layers and make it available.
Good design discussions.
Yeah, my gut feeling is that if you're never doing other different logic with this payload, then I would say you just handle the payload right there in line 11, because there's not a whole lot of value in passing step to step, unless you just want to have like really small steps. But that I would probably handle what I'm doing there, and try to make the action as complete, basically as atomic an operation as you can think, right?
I can see breaking it apart like you would a script include. There's a difference between having one function with 600 lines in it versus having, say, 10 functions with 60 lines in it, or 60 functions with 10 lines in them. It becomes a maintenance thing and almost a discrete discipline of what does this step do. Granted, the steps are going to execute in that order and not be called recursively or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, you could have solely a fetch step here, and solely a process step, and then solely an insert step, or whatever.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
Well, and the one thing that would do is, if you're fetching and then processing in 2 steps, is if later on down the road you want to convert your fetch step to use the rest step, at what point
right,
the servers are
that's a good point.
Capable. That would be a thing.
That would make it definitely a thing. Is if we had this retrieve step and we could, do the processing in the next step, this could be replaced when we can use the rest step builder when it can handle mid servers.
Yeah, I think that's definitely there. And then the other thing, I'm glad you mentioned script includes, Chuck, because this is one of the things that some of those out-of-box spokes do, which is Slack, for example, bundles up that common functionality in the script include. So there is a point at which you get into sort of more traditional, we're going to create a script include that does the common stuff and then just call that in the action. So then you could have multiple actions, each of those actions being atomic, but still reusing the same code base. So that's an option too.
Wow, that gives like 3 levels to your development effort. You got somebody who's doing the script include code, somebody who's managing it into the steps and actions, and then somebody who's actually dragging and dropping it around on a flow. That's pretty phenomenal stuff from an operational standpoint.
Well, yeah, and I think the 2 takeaways for me on this are that I don't think we have a clear. There are clearly some things to think about between now and the next time we pick this up. And the second thing is that the platform gives you the level of robustness you need for your use case. So if you need one, you can do one. If you need the other, you can do the other.
All right. So I think it's a good time to stop sharing. Yeah. And hand it back over to Dave.
Well, all right. Okay. That was pretty fun. I like that. So let us go around the horn. Boy, it got dark. It got dark fast in Andrew's house.
Man!
And the whole time she was not on camera, man. It's kind of
East Coast, Central.
Kind of Nightmare Before Christmas kind of a look in there. All right, so
later
Andrew,
that same year.
What's your rating on your mixed drinks? You also have a very poor separation of rating, because you're not rating either beer. You're rating the mixture of the beers.
I actually tasted them separately and then put them together, and the amber, so the criminally bad elf, is gonna be, oh gosh, that was pretty good. So like a 4.2.
Okay.
And the
what style is that? What style is the elf?
So it is a
like an ale, amber. I think you said amber.
It's like an amber, but so it's very light in color. The Lump of Coal Dark Holiday Stout, however, was really good, but it actually, if I tasted it on its own, it would probably been, near a 4. But combining it with this made the merger like a 4.3.
Oh, wow!
That they're both improved by joining.
You're clearly not an untapped user because of the 10th of a point resolution.
4.327.
All right, Chuck.
I'm going to give the Deschutes Fresh Squeeze IPA the 3.75. It might be the time of year, like I said when I had the hard cider the other day. it doesn't feel like IPA season to me. So a little lower than the last time I drank it.
All right, Josh.
The Around the Bend Pretty Lights Belgian triple with cranberry and almond. It starts out tasting like a Belgian triple, and all of a sudden you get this burst of cranberry and almond, and it's very tart and it's very weird. Contextually, it's a 3.5. On a normal day, it'd be probably a 2.5. I don't like it very much, but it makes me think of Christmas, and so the rating goes up.
Fruitcake in a can.
And the White Christmas, again, is helped a little by the context. I was thinking 4.0, like while Andrew was coding, I actually entered this in Untapped. And it was one of those ones where I went back and my previous rating was a 4.0. Now, for you two other Untapped users, what's the, for a beer you don't remember ever rating before, what's the wildest swing you've ever had? You know, where you go and you say, oh, this is a 3, and you realize you've rated a 4.5 or something. Like, what's the biggest swing you can remember?
2 full points.
2 full points.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yes.
How about you, Chuck?
I'd say I never went more than 1, maybe 1.25.
I'm going to say like a 1.0. I don't know that I've ever been more than 1.0, but sometimes like even 1.0 feels like a lot. 2 is huge.
Right. Because that would
huge.
take you like from a 4.25, which is pretty sweet, to 3.25, which is meh.
Well below average.
So I've never had even a full point swing on Untapped because I'm a robot. Same input, same output.
There you go. Andrew Barnes, the drinking Turing machine. All right. So with that, my friends, we're gonna wrap it up for the year. Unless are you guys having one next? I guess we're not. It's a company holiday next week. I think so.
Yeah, I'm off.
Let's not do it. So, all right. So we'll see everybody in the new year, and happy holidays to those on the U.S. who celebrate it, and happy whatever you've got going on outside of the Western world. And see y'all in a couple weeks.
See y'all.
All right. Bye-bye.